The Rings of Power, Episode 7, is a new low for Middle-earth. If you thought last week's episode of Rings of Power was bad and you can watch the roast that I recorded and upload very late, sorry for missing the party, you have to prepare yourself for more cringe-worthy disasters that represents this show. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the showrunners somehow managed to deliver an hour of television that redefined boredom, confused more than it clarified, and dashed any hope that this series will ever live up to the name Tolkien. Let's break down the latest train wreck that is Episode 7, because, much like the dwarves mining, we're digging deep to find anything of any real value anymore. So, if you want exclusive access and early access to content, please consider becoming a channel member or joining my Patreon, like Subdo the usual. Nonsensical non-plot twists. I guess we're supposed to be thrilled by the twist in this episode, but someone explain what actually happened. There's a difference between a plot twist that surprises you and one that makes you question whether the writers even understand their own story. The reveal, or is it another tease, about Sauron is so convoluted it's hard to care anymore. At this point, every character might as well be Sauron because no one's doing anything that makes sense. Case in point, the big reveal in this episode felt like it'd been building for ages, only to fizzle out like a wet firework. Or a middle-aged man that forgot to take his little blue pill. We're 7 episodes deep into this mess, and Sauron still feels like a myth whispered in the pasting. We get more screen time devoted to side characters sharing nothing much, and teasing what's into the horizon than actual plot developments. Galadriel and her never-ending drama seems to be an endless point in this episode. Remember when Galadriel was one of the most powerful enigmatic figures in Tolkien's lore? Well, she's basically reduced to a moody, angst-ridden protagonist with all the personality and interest of Bella from Twilight. She's a teenage soap opera, a horrible actress, delivering horrible lines. In episode 7, she spends yet another round doing what exactly? Moping about her fate, delivering another insufferable monologue about destiny. The writers keep trying to paint her as this fierce warrior with a tragic backstory, but all we're left with is a hollow character whose motivations are as vague as her dialogue is painful. For someone who's supposed to be an ancient being of incredible wisdom, she sure spends a lot of time acting like a grumpy teenager who missed her bloody curfew. All I kept thinking was when, watching this episode, will this dumb bitch just shut up? Let's be honest here. That's the whole thing with her. And the side quests and the time fillers. There is an overreaching plot to the show, or is it just a bunch of random disconnected side quests loosely stitched together? In episode 7, we're teased more scenes with Half-Foots because apparently we needed more of these wandering, aimless morons trawling around Middle-earth. Some mind-numbing political intrigue in Numenor and random cutaways to other subplots that feel like they're purely to pad out the runtime. None of these storylines seem to be building to anything meaningful. We're at the point of showing us endless scenes of Half-Foots if they're not going anywhere. What's the point of watching these vile little creatures hobble around Middle-earth looking like the great unwashed? Why are we watching characters who we barely care about just do this with no actual tangle to the main plot? This episode was just more of the same. Lots of walking, talking, bonding, but no actual progress made. It's like watching the Hobbit's riddle in the dark scene on a loop, but without the charm or tension. If you want to take a moment to address the villain situation, I'm happy to do that, or lack thereof. What's happening here? The orcs, once terrifying forces of destruction, feel like they're bumbling extras in a video game side mission. And Adar? Why? Let's just say he's about as menacing as a grumpy schoolteacher. His entire presence in this episode was a reminder that Rings of Power has forgotten how to write a compelling antagonist, and everyone just wants to sympathise with him and make him and have fluffy bunny feelings for him. Really? He looks like a conehead with a bad wig on. There is nothing redeemable about the writing of this villain. And where is the sense of danger? Where is the tension that should be creeping through the lands of Middle-earth as Sauron's shadow rises? Instead, we're given villains that are as scary as a lukewarm cup of tea. Episode 7 did nothing to improve this, and if anything, it made it worse. We're still left waiting for something, anything, that makes us feel like there's any real threat to Middle-earth. You think that with Amazon's deep pockets and vast resources would be treated to some truly epic world building, yet episode 7 continues the series' trend of showing us stunning visuals with zero emotional narrative weight. Numenor, once the most anticipated settings in the show, feels as bland as a fantasy postcard. There's no depth to this world. Instead of immersing us in rich cultures and histories of Middle-earth, the show just skims the surface. Numenor could be a powerful location for drama, politics, and epic discussions, but instead we're left with filler scenes that felt as inspired as a bad TV movie. This episode, much like the rest of the series, confused big pretty landscapes with actual storytelling. As beautiful as those CGI shots are, they don't make up for the fact that the world feels so hollow and thin. And yet again, pacing. If you thought pacing issues were bad before, episode 7 manages to drag even more. Whole segments could have been cut. No one would have noticed. The drawn-out scenes of characters staring into the distance, having cryptic conversations that go nowhere, and wandering through forests without clear purpose could easily be cut down by 20 minutes. And this episode might actually have some momentum. The pacing is sluggish. By the time the credits roll, you realise there's nothing of substance actually happening. It's an antagonising slow crawl towards, well, we don't know yet. But apparently we're supposed to be excited about the Sauron reveal. Whenever that finally comes, the audience may already be asleep. Let's be real. Season 2, Episode 7 of Rings of Power confirmed many of our worst fears. The show doesn't know what it's doing. It's lost in a labyrinth of subplots, character drama, and endless exploration without any meaningful direction. For a show based on one of the richest, most beloved fantasy worlds of all times, it's baffled how lifeless and tedious it's become. Episode 7 doesn't have a turning point, but instead it's more of just the same bloated, unfocused mess. It's so hard to see how this series could recover from it. I doubt the next episodes will surprise us. At this point, it feels like wishful thinking. Middle-earth deserves better, and maybe deserves better. This show is not it. Lifeless, limp, and just insufferable.